We are officially back as the Carolina Panthers had their preseason opener on Friday night against the Cleveland Browns inside Bank of America Stadium. I'll give you all of my takeaways from the Panthers opener right here on Locked On Panthers.
You are Locked On Panthers, your daily Carolina Panthers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, the part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, as always, Julian Council, talking Carolina Panthers with you every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and yes, of course, Friday. Your team every day. That's our motto here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for watching the show live right here on YouTube, as I'll be live following every single regular season game and, of course, following preseason games here covering your Carolina Panthers. And thank you for also listening wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. If you ever miss a live edition of the show, it'll always be there later on YouTube and in your podcast feeds. Be sure to follow me, Julian Council, over on Twitter and Blue Sky at Julian Council. We're starting on September 3rd, heading into the week 1 matchup in Jacksonville. The weekly Wednesday mailbag is back here on the show. In the meantime, you can at me or DM me over on Twitter or at me over on Blue Sky at Julian Council. If any questions, any of your perspective, thoughts about the Panthers throughout training camp and the rest of the preseason. Today's episode of Locked On Panthers brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. We are officially back, and I am sitting here inside Bank of America Stadium following the Carolina Panthers preseason debut loss, I think 30-7 against Cleveland Browns. Honestly, I wasn't really concerned about the score. I was just trying to see how this team has progressed through the first 3 weeks of training camp and with joint practice on Wednesday with these Cleveland Browns. Wanted to see certain things from this team on Friday night, and I felt like I saw a good bit about what I was hoping to see. So let's go ahead and start off with some offensive takeaways and observations that I had from this Friday evening. And of course, let's start off with Bryce Young and the first team offense. Last year, a lot of us were clamoring for Dave Canales to play Bryce, considering it was a brand new offense, new weapons on the outside, new offensive line. It only made sense that you would try to build that continuity in the preseason. Well, that did not happen. We saw how the season started off. And of course, Dave Canales decided to make what I believe is the correct choice in having Bryce and the starters play what ended up being 2 series. And he did tell us earlier this week that if it was a 3-and-out, which it was start off the game, that they would bring him out for another drive. And that second drive was successful. But overall, I felt like Bryce looked comfortable, had control of the offense, and looked a lot like the same guy we saw in the second half of the season. Even if it was only 2 series, in the first one, like there's an incompletion to Chuba Hubbard, which is a ball thrown slightly behind him. There's a sack on that third down where the coverage was pretty good by Cleveland. It was against the Cleveland Browns 2s, and then Ja'Tyre Carter, who was filling in at left guard for Damian Lewis, he kind of gave up a sack there. But on the second drive, a beautiful throw by Bryce on a fade route to the right sideline, right by the Panther sideline to Tetairoa McMillan, something that I think all of you who watched tonight or came to the stadium wanted to see, that connection between Bryce and T-Mac, the 8th overall pick, and the future number 1 wide receiver here in Carolina. And matter of fact, if you looked at it, the way the Panthers started off the game, they had 2 tight ends, Mitchell Evans and JT Sanders, and only 2 wide receivers. That was Xavier Leggette. We'll get to him later. And that was Tetairoa McMillan. So if we're looking at a 1 and a 2, it appears to be T-Mac and XL, with Adam Thielen being the 3rd wide receiver here in Carolina. The only incompletion we saw from Bryce was the drop there by Chuba Hubbard, which is, again, slightly behind him. Then there's a drop by Tetairoa McMillan on a ball where he said he just got his head around too late. And that's what I thought it looked like on the play. It wasn't necessarily the route being bad. The time he didn't get around quick enough, and it was a good ball by Bryce, but Bryce trusted him. We saw that Bryce was targeting a lot on Wednesday during joint practice between Cleveland, that carry over to the game today. And then later on in that drive, we saw a nice throw from Bryce to T-Mac, a 13-yard reception to set up a first down. I think it might have been a 1st and goal at that situation. And then we saw a textbook off platform scramble drill from Bryce, finding Jalen Coker in the back of the end zone. Shout out to all the cokeheads out there who, of course, wanted to see their boy go out there and have a night, and he did have a night, certainly. So I felt like when looking at the offense that Bryce played well. You got a big play from McMillan. You were able to run the ball a little bit. They weren't that dedicated to doing it. The offensive line held up fairly well, at least the guys who are going to start. Carter, we'll see where he fits in here moving forward. Damian Lewis is apparently dealing with what Dave Canales called was a strained shoulder, which is going to have him week to week, and he's not sure whether that's going to impact his ability to be out there week 1 down in Jacksonville. So that's something to monitor over the next couple of weeks. So a guy like Ja'Tyre Carter is going to get a lot of opportunities at left guard. Maybe Jarrett Kingston gets opportunities there. We'll see when Chandler Zavala is able to come back, as he's right now dealing with a patellar tendon issue in his knee. But I thought overall, the ones for the Panthers offense going up against the Browns twos, you didn't get off to the best start. It's fine. It's preseason. You're getting back under the swing of things to go out there the next drive to move it down the field, have some big plays, and be able to score a touchdown on a vintage Bryce Young play. Like, that's a positive to me, and I think it should be a positive to everyone else out there as well. The fight, got to get to it. Didn't know XL had it in him. I suppose I should have known, but did not expect that because he's just such a happy-go-lucky guy. But he got in a little tiff there with Rayshawn Jenkins, and it's important to mention that it was Rayshawn Jenkins. This is the same guy, 28 from Cleveland, who on Wednesday just marched over after a play and chucked a football at the back of Chuba Hubbard's helmet. Surprisingly, no brawl broke out after that when it was not necessarily a heated joint practice. I would have thought of any moment that would have been the time. Nothing happened. They moved on. And tonight, Dave Canales said that they teach their receivers to go through the whistle and the play to the end. And that's what XL was doing. And eventually, Jenkins is grabbing his face mask, pulling his helmet off, and XL gave him a 1, a 2, a 3, and a 4, connecting on every single punch on Rayshawn Jenkins, which, of course, led to him and Jenkins being ejected. Obviously, you can't have it, but also kind of hilarious because did you ever expect Xavier Leggette to be the guy who got ran from a preseason game for getting in a fight in the first quarter? Probably not. He did tweet out to all of y'all saying, Panthers Nation, I apologize. It won't happen. He said want, but it won't happen again. I appreciate you all. So even after being ejected, he is back to his same old self over on Twitter/X. And yeah, I mean, Dave doesn't want to see that. We don't want to see it. But if it's going to happen, let it happen in the preseason. Let it be a learning moment. But that's clearly on Jenkins, a guy who did some Bush League stuff on Wednesday, and then Leggette reacted the way that he did, defended himself. Probably shouldn't have gone that far. But it is what it is. And that actually allowed Jalen Coker to come in to make that play on that Bryce scramble drill, touchdown the back of the end zone, which is a huge thing. Because that leads me to my another point that I got about the takeaways here. Jalen Coker's taking advantage of the opportunity in front of him. Just got back from the locker room where we were talking to him and a couple other Panther players following the game. And I had asked him just like about his training routine, because this is something that Dave Canales mentioned a couple of days ago, mentioned again tonight, about how they sat down with Jalen. They told him, hey, this is what we need to do to get you to where you want to be in 5 weeks. And when you do that, you're going to see the results. And we're seeing the results so far from Jalen Coker, especially over the last week. Because you go back to a Monday ago, it was Hunter Renfrow Day out at training camp. Dabo Sweeney's in attendance. Hunter's making great plays. He's the star of training camp. Then he goes down with that hamstring injury. And all while that was happening, Jalen Coker was still out there making plays. But when you looked at just where he stood on the roster, and we've talked about this a lot, and I'm sure Coke heads think I'm a Jalen Coker hater, which is not the case at all. I'm just pointing out just the factual thing of reality that you have T-Mac now. He's your number 1 guy. Leggette's your number 2. Thielen right now is slotted in at number 3. At worst, Coker's your 5, but right now he's clearly the 4th guy. And you saw the value of having Jalen Coker on the roster tonight. When Xavier Leggette gets tossed, he can come in, he can be on the same page as Bryce Young, get open and score a touchdown in that scenario. And it wasn't just in, he had a terrific down the field one-handed catch with his right hand of Andy Dalton in there at quarterback that got called back because of, I think, a hold or whatever it was. I mean, we're counting it. That was the highlight of the night for a play that did not count. The guy is done an excellent job of getting his body right. And that's been a common theme. We've heard the same thing when it comes to JT Sanders and what he's done by hiring a chef, losing some weight, being in shape. And I even asked Jalen about having to be in a crowded locker room as far as the wide receiver room and finding ways to impact the team and playing on special teams. And he said that's exactly what I wanted to do. Because last year he talked about how he was fortunate with Adam being injured and also with Deontay Johnson, who was back home here back in Carolina, not at home certainly, but he was back here in Carolina, like him being traded away, that opened up the opportunity for Jalen Coker to come in and to be that wide receiver 3 last year when Adam was back, and then also with XL out there. But he knows that with those 3 guys in McMillan and Thielen and Leggette ahead of him, he needed to add another piece to his repertoire and be able to help this team. And he's done that. Dave Canales was giddy about seeing what reps he had on special teams. I saw him repping on the kickoff team on Wednesday, and I'm sure he did some of that today. Wasn't necessarily paying too much attention to who was on those teams or not, but that's a guy who has value, and he understood the assignment of what he needed to do to prepare his body and also prepare himself overall as a player, as a wide receiver, outside of just catching the ball, and how he can help this team. So you got to love having that guy. I know plenty of you already love him, but you saw again tonight where he's able to impact the game and what his value is to Carolina and why. I mean, they're going to keep at least 6. I mean, he's very clearly going to be on the team. Like, there's no question about that. And if they keep 7, obviously, he's going to be around. So, like, how many teams in the NFL have a young, ascending 4th wide receiver like that, and then potentially a 5th guy in Hunter Renfrow, flip-flop, whatever you want to do? Like, this is a receiving core that has gotten infinitely better than where it was a couple of years ago, and Jalen Coker is a big part of that. Tetairoa McMillan made his NFL debut, as his preseason debut, maybe not NFL debut, tonight. And again, the fade route right there on the Panther sideline. Great catch by him. That's what a number 1 receiver has to do in this league. And he had another good catch on that slant that I believe set up a 1st and goal. But then the drop, can't have a drop touchdown. Fortunate enough, the next play, Bryce finds Jalen for the touchdown. Then later on, there's another drop with Andy Dalton. So hoping that's not going to be a theme. I saw a couple the other day where he did make some plays, had one that was a drop touchdown on Wednesday. Still a young guy, getting used to the physicality of the game. But, man, he's on the same page as his quarterback for the most part. He's looked the part. He's working hard. He's studying. So I'm not concerned about him. Good first step. Excited to see how he performs next week. I will not be in Houston on Thursday for joint practice. I'll be watching the game, of course, back here in Charlotte on Saturday when they have their second preseason game next weekend down there against the Texans. But I think McMillan clearly on the right path. And if he comes up with that catch and doesn't have the other drop, we're talking about a guy who just excelled in his preseason NFL debut. So I thought that he looked good overall, and just the offense looked pretty sharp as far as the first team goes. Second team had some issues with some penalties. Jack Plummer, I mean, missed 2 guys wide to hell open, just threw the ball out of bounds, and that just kind of goes back to there's no reason to waste a roster spot there. I don't think they're going to, but I think maybe you can stick around and be on the practice squad. You have to always look at it as 53 guys on the active roster. You got 16 other guys who are going to be on the practice squad that can be elevated at certain points in times. Last thing I'll talk about is the offensive line. Austin Corbett was starting at center. He was a starting center on Wednesday as well. Curious if they are in pads on Monday and even going to next week on that Thursday joint practice with the Texans. And then on Saturday against the Texans, whether Cade Mays gets that opportunity as he was running with the 2s of Brady Christensen at left tackle. Ja'Tyre Carter, who was at left guard to start with the 1s, was also there with the 2s. Brandon Walton was in at right guard. Then Josh Nyman was at right tackle for the second team offensive line, which I didn't think they played that well. There was one time where Christensen and Nyman both got beat on a sack of Andy Dalton. I don't think Andy had as much time as you would expect. And I expect a little bit more out of that unit. Now, Chandler Zavala not being healthy, that probably does not help as far as just the overall floor of what that unit should be, and then continuity is a huge thing. But yeah, Ja'Tyre Carter going to get an opportunity, it looks like, to fill in at left guard for the time being. We'll see if they maybe try to cycle in Brady Christensen, who's been effectively their sixth offensive line, but they've liked, at least in the preseason I've seen it in training camp, to kind of stick guys in the same spot. Now, you look at the unofficial depth chart, they have Carter as a second team right guard, but not having Zavala, you kind of have to do what you got to do at this point in time. So Corbett, just from what I've seen recently, also the fact that he's a veteran, the contract that they gave him appears to be in the catbird seat there for the starting center job here in Carolina this year. But still plenty of time left, so at least maybe another week left for Cade Mays to try to show that he should be the guy this year. Then they'll figure out as far as what they want to do there with Cade and if he fits into their plans heading into the season. So offensively, first team offense, give it a good grade. Second team offensive line could have been a little bit better. Did see some good bursts from Jimmy Horn. You could just see just how twitchy he is, and if he could get open and make a big play, like that's going to be a guy who down the line is going to help you out. But I don't think this season is necessarily when that's going to happen. Maybe they can find some unique sets to put him in, but right now, you just got so many guys in that room, and he's going to be more of a special teamer. And we'll talk about special teams a little bit later on here on the show. So overall, thought that Bryce came out, looked good offensively as far as the ones goes. They did what you needed to do. I had someone tweet at me and say, well, they better play well. They're going to go up against the Browns twos. Don't think there's anything to be too alarmed by after watching the offense. Plenty to be excited about, especially when looking at the receivers, McMillan, Coker, and everybody else in that room heading into the rest of training camp, preseason, of course, ahead of the 2025 regular season. The defense, how do they perform? We'll talk about that here in just a moment on Locked On Panthers. This episode is presented by Yahoo Fantasy. It's the best time of the year. NFL kickoff is almost here, and that means fantasy football season is back in full swing. And this year, Yahoo Fantasy is turning things up with fantasy football experience like never before. This year, me and Locked On NFL are playing on Yahoo Fantasy, and you should too. Whether you're a first-timer or a veteran making your millionth league, to celebrate 28 years of Yahoo football greatness, Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features over 28 days throughout August. To kick it off, they just dropped Yahoo Fantasy Guillotine Leagues, a killer new way to play fantasy football on Yahoo, where the lowest scoring team gets eliminated each week until there's one team left standing. With the season around the corner, now's the time to get your league together and give this new mode a try. If you're more into the classics, you can still play in head-to-head private leagues or join a public league. Stay tuned for more killer announcements and start playing Yahoo Fantasy Football now at yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. Carolina Panthers wrapping up week one of the preseason at home against Cleveland Browns, falling 30-7, but the scoreline not really important at all. What was important was getting to see some of the backups get an opportunity, getting to see the ones also go out there and perform in really what's like the first time we've seen in the Canales era, the first team offense and defense getting not extended, but getting a little bit of run in the preseason. Only played one series a piece last year, week 3 of the preseason against Buffalo. And when speaking to Dave Canales after the game, he did say he would like to get them out there for 3 series next week in Houston, which would be awesome to see. It also depends upon what happens on Thursday with joint practice with the Texans, and also depends on how those first drive or 2 go next week when they do go down there and play them in the second week of the preseason. So just something to keep in mind going into it. As far as first team defense goes, did not have Derek Brown. He's dealing with a rib and an oblique issue. JC Horn was out with the thumb injury. And then also, I think, that's it as far as the starters. So those guys missed time. So looking at the defense overall, I felt like they did their job. They got the 3 and out to start off. Nice play by Corey Thornton to get a PBU there, force that 3 and out. Then the second drive, don't love giving up what they gave up on the ground and letting Shedeur Sanders and Cleveland's twos move the ball down to the field near to the red zone. But then they were able to get off the field. DJ Wonnum had a nice pressure to force that turnover on down. Shedeur just like running 30 yards backwards, trying to make a play, which of course was unable to do at that point in time. So looking at the ones, like, they got their job done. That's all I can really say based off of what we saw from them. Would be more preferred to see them go up against the ones next week when they play against Houston. They'll get that opportunity on Thursday, but will they get that opportunity on Saturday? We'll see what D'Amico Ryans and that organization decides to do. But the second thing that stood out to me, and we all got to talk to him in the locker room, Corey Thornton. He's a dude, man. You look at the unofficial depth chart, and I'm looking at it right now. If you look at it, it's got Corey Thornton all the way back here with the fourth team. And I told y'all on the show for today, this morning, that that's nonsense. Malarkey. Like, that's not a guy who's going to be playing into the fourth quarter at all. Like, he, based off of everything that we had seen, has been someone who's been with the first team whenever Mike Jackson or J.C. Horn have either rotated out or not been available. He's been their third outside corner. And I told you that he would start. And that's exactly what happened. He started alongside Mike Jackson with J.C. Horn not out there, and he made some plays. And tonight was a big night for Corey Thornton and for a lot of the young guys in the secondary. There's been plenty of conversation about the depth on the roster. And when you look at how the defense played as far as the backups go, maybe there's still questions about that depth, but a lot of guys who probably are going to be called upon anyways are giving up some of those plays later on in the game tonight in the second half. So probably don't be too alarmed. But it was important for Corey Thornton, for Lathan Ransom, for Shamar Bartholomew, a lot of those guys to show the organization that you have something in us. You don't need to go out and bring anybody else in. And yes, the Panthers need to do their due diligence and look across the other 31 teams and see, once a roster cut down day happens, who's available on the waiver wire, which vested veterans are available for you to potentially sign to improve that room. But right now, like, Corey Thornton, he's number 3 as far as the outside corners go. It's JC, it's Mike Jack, and then it's him. Yes, Shaw Smith-Wade, he's a starter at nickel. But looking as far as the outside guys go, Corey Thornton has been really good. Had the pass breakup on the first drive, had a WWE move on that running back who tried to hurdle him. I would hope that guy learned his lesson to never do that again, at least when Corey Thornton's there. Yes, Corey gave up a touchdown. He was kind of hard on himself on that, but that's a learning moment for him moving forward. And then he was able to undercut a ball and almost had an interception. And honestly, probably should have had the interception, but I thought that guy went out there, played aggressive, and has continued to earn it. And Dave Canales said after the game that he showed up like he's shown up every single day here during training camp. And even Nic Scourton said, like, from even before they put on pads way back in the spring, that he could tell that Corey Thornton was different, that he brought a different kind of mentality and a physicality, which we saw out there on the field tonight. So I'm so happy that all of y'all got to see out of Corey Thornton that we've been witnessing over the last couple of weeks since camp has been going on. And speaking of Nic Scourton, I had Alex Zeitlo of the Charlotte Observer on Monday just to get his perspective of FanFest and what he has seen so far at training camp. Because every single one of us, we see different things. The sight lines, they're not the best, but, not trying to make excuses. But, one man, two eyes. We all try to collaborate, talk to each other, and feel how everyone else feels about certain things that they saw. And I had told Alex I didn't really feel like Nic Scourton had really stood out that much. He said, I think he's been pretty good against the run. You saw tonight. He's been pretty good against the run. He also had a couple of pressures there. Like, that's a guy who's going to kind of do a lot of the dirty work. I know that's what Pat Jones II's kind of here for. DJ Wonnum, more of a guy who's going to be a situational pass rusher for you. Princely Umanmielen, he's flashed as well. But Scourton can be an all-around kind of edge rusher for this team. And that was, I think, the hope that everyone had, this organization had, when they decided to go out there to take him and to take Princely. And I had asked him just kind of about his relationship with Princely, and he said it's been awesome. That just those guys getting in here, learning from each other. And he talked about Princely's dip, and he's talked about how he's more of like the cerebral player. Not to say that Princely's not, but he is really trying to study his craft, watch film, and just his approach to it really makes me think that he's going to be a guy that you all are going to love. And I've had people ask, who are some of the Panther players like recently, like who will become beloved players? Like, I don't know. They got to win games, got to make plays. And he was talking about that too. He's like, I got to make plays. I got to go out there and do it on Sunday. And I think tonight was a good start because he went out there, looked like he had 2 tackles for losses, credited for a sack. I think that was the one where Sanders was running away and then he was able to get out of bounds, but I think he was still behind. So I think they gave that sack to Scourton. It all runs together, honestly, but he he was out there making plays tonight. So that's a guy that I was excited about. I think y'all, of course, are excited. He went out there, did some dirty work, and showed you his value, not just as a pass rusher, but also as a guy who can go in there and be able to set the edge, stop the run, which is sorely needed after what we all saw last year with this run defense. The Panthers, they put out a little sheet here in the folder with all the stats from last year. Don't want to look at the defensive stats because I was like, God, it really was that bad, wasn't it? Another thing, like just the lineups, first team defense tonight on a defensive line, Ashawn Robinson and Turk Wharton. Bobby Brown III was not with the ones. He actually played pretty deep into the game, was playing in the third quarter. I wonder if that's just him not being ready to go at first, because him and Sam Martin got a lot of work. Sam Martin really has not done a ton in camp as he was recovering from the hamstring, and he punted a ton tonight, which it's the preseason, makes a lot of sense that would happen. But Bobby Brown also started off on non-football injury lists and then has kind of been worked in a little bit, but not a ton. They paid him a lot of money. He's going to be a guy who's going to be rotating in with the starters once the season begins. But I found it interesting that he was playing deep into the third quarter. And he made a couple of nice plays too, just looking at the stats. He had 3 tackles, 1 tackle for loss. So I thought that he was out there pretty active with the second team tonight. Then DJ One and Patrick Jones starting at the edge, Trevin Wallace, Christian Roseboom at linebacker, and then Corey Thornton, Shaw Smith-Wade, Mike Jackson. Nick Scott was starting, Damani Richardson and Teron Merrick. Now Merrick came out, man, I want to say after the first 2 drives he was done. And then after that, it was Scott, and then it was Richardson out there as the 2 safeties. And then Nick Scott came out of the game at some point in the second quarter. He may have played the entire first half. I don't quite remember whether he did, but Richardson was playing into the third quarter. Same thing with Lathan Ransom. So we'll see how that goes with Nick Scott. I'm still very skeptical if he's going to be on the initial 53, but everything I'm seeing right now is he's a starter, so maybe he will be. We'll find out how that plays out, as he's a guy who knows the scheme. Obviously, Ejiro Evero has trust in him from what he has seen from him, I guess, in the past. But yeah, he's getting those opportunities. And then there was an interesting time too where Prince McMillan rotated in on third down for Ashawn Robinson. So it was McMillan, Wonnum, in Jones. So I guess Ejiro Evero is kind of a NASCAR package there. Did not see Scourton rotated in at that point in time. That was one thing I observed. And looking at the second team defense, Bobby Brown III was out there with Shai Tuttle. DJ Johnson, Nic Scourton were paired together at first. And then McMillan came in there as well. Jacoby Windman and John Radigan. I did not see Chris Barnes, the veteran linebacker who was signed earlier this week to be that third guy. I didn't see him until the fourth quarter. And I think that's just kind of one of those acclimation kind of things. He is listed as like a 4th-string linebacker. I guess right now he is, but yeah, they didn't sign him to not be the guy behind Trevin Wallace and Christian Roseboom. So just an observation there. Corey Thornton was out there for the entire first half. Then it was out in the second half. Then Shamar Bartholomew, Mike Reed playing at the nickel spot. And then again, Damani Richardson, Nick Scott. And then once Scott rotated out, it was Richardson and Lathan Ransom. So like what I seen out of the young guys, Shaw Smith-Wade's continue to look good. Corey Thornton looks like a dude. And Nic Scourton, I mean, that's a guy who I think y'all are going to love. The defense, yes, the 2s, the 3s really gave up a lot of points. It's a lot of guys who are not going to be playing on this team once we get to September. So no reason to freak out about it. If you bet the Panthers at that -6, I'm sorry. Make sure you use FanDuel if you're going to do it again. But like, yeah, the scoreline's not what's important. What Corey Thornton, what Nic Scourton, what some of these other younger guys did that were positive, like that's what's important. And also ability to build off of some of the things that we saw, because Thornton and Shamar Bartholomew both gave up touchdowns, and those right now are the 2 outside corners behind JC and behind Mike Jack that they're going to be relying on potentially later on. All right, talk about offense, talk about defense. What about special teams, kick returners, punt returners, and the kick controversy? Has anything been solved at all? We'll talk about that here in just a moment on Locked On Panthers. We've all been there, logging on early and waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. That's where Game Time comes in. Game Time makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime, and you can save up to 60% off with their killer last-minute deals. Take the guesswork out of buying concert tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, a few more thoughts here on the Panthers preseason opener as they fall to the Browns 30-7. Scoreline not really important at all. Let's talk special teams. Returner competition. A lot of guys got an opportunity to return kicks because the Browns scored a lot of points, which, okay, whatever. That's a good thing, at least to see the rotations. Punt return-wise, Raheem Blackshear, he was the first one up out there. Then Trevor Etienne got an opportunity. He did muff that punt, but that was Nic Scourton, who I see being here primarily to be a special teams guy, not having awareness and running into the guy on his team return to kick. So that got muffed, and in Cleveland, I believe, converted that later on into a touchdown. Jimmy Horn Jr. also had a punt return. Trevor Etienne got another opportunity, and then TJ Luther. So Blackshear, Etienne, Horn appear to be like the three guys to look at when it comes to punt return at this point in time. Kickoff return, Raheem Blackshear and Trevor Etienne were on the first kickoff that Carolina got. Imani Bailey and Trevor Etienne were also out there. Etienne actually had a nice return on that one. That was called back for holding. Jimmy Horn and Imani Bailey were later on out there for a kick return to start the second half. Bailey received it, and he knelt. And Jimmy Horn was out there with TJ Luther one time, had a decent return. Actually was able to slip out of a tackle and show his shiftiness and why Carolina and a lot of teams were interested in him as a returner at this level. And then Etienne was out there later on with TJ Luther, and Luther returned and got clotheslined. I mean, just tough hit that he took. I would think that, again, much like punt returner, Blackshear, Etienne, Horn, those are the guys to look at. Raheem Blackshear is very clearly the fourth running back. He was the last guy to go out there running back tonight, behind Chuba, behind Rico, and behind Trevor. So there's that. And then, so as far as kick traversy, the kicking competition, I know the stupid thing that I say, kick traversy. I don't know if we sold anything tonight because, again, the Panthers scored, maybe it was 30-10. Yeah, I keep saying 30-7. Whatever. 30-10, doesn't matter. Yeah, let me double check because I'm getting it wrong. I've already gotten it wrong. Yeah, okay, 30-10. So they only scored twice. So you didn't have a ton of field goal opportunities. Matthew Wright very clearly was the kicker in the first half. He had the opening kickoff. He got to kick the extra point. That was good, of course. And then you also saw later on from 32 yards when Jack Plummer got to move the ball down the field. Actually had like a nice throw or two on that drive. You got to see Ryan Fitzgerald come in and make the kick right down the middle, and then he had to kick off. I don't think we've solved anything. Dave Canales said he wanted to take it into the preseason into the games. Well, we've done that, and we've only seen an extra point and a field goal. That was basically, I think extra point's actually 33, but right there, basically the same yardage as an extra point. So, yeah, we have not necessarily solved anything at all, which is fine. It's very possible that the Panthers kicker this season is not even on the roster right now. Not to say that the guy from last year, Pinheiro, is going to be back, but it's possible that neither one of these guys ends up being a dude and that they go find somebody later on. I don't think either one of them is giving them that reason to do so at this point in time. But if you were thinking that tonight we were going to get any sort of resolution there, personally, I don't think that we got one. Maybe Dave believes they got one. But we'll see, as I'm guessing that's going to carry over maybe another week, depending upon maybe some other factors that I'm just not privy to as far as that kicker competition goes. Overall, great to be back out here at Bank of America Stadium on a Friday evening. Hopefully everybody who came had a great time, got home safely, and everyone sitting at home enjoyed their Friday night on the couch watching some Panther football like a good Carolinian, Charlottean, wherever you are across the world, Germany, Finland, possibly Australia, wherever you are. I hope you enjoyed getting to check out this game and the fact that we are one step closer to the games actually mattering. And yes, this matters to a certain extent as far as what we talked about, what we saw. But it's always good to be here talking Carolina Panthers football with y'all live on YouTube and back in the stadium, getting to watch the boys out there in black and processed blue. So That's fun. All right, it's going to wrap up this edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, part of Locked On Podcast Network, hosted by yours truly, Julian Council. Again, y'all subscribe or follow the show free over on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And be sure to follow me, Julian Council, over on Twitter and Blue Sky at Julian Council, where I'll be answering your questions every Wednesday throughout the regular season. But in the meantime, you can hit me up in my DMs on Twitter or just at me on Blue Sky or just at me on Twitter as well with any thoughts you have on the Panthers throughout the preseason, any questions that you have. I'll always try to get back to you and answer those questions. But in the meantime, be safe, be happy, be whole as always, and forever keep pounding. And I will talk to y'all on Tuesday, likely, maybe Monday, with my reactions to Panthers training camp.